All right, Metalheads, on the line, we have award-winning filmmaker Sam Dunn, who you will know from such amazing movies as Metal: A Headbanger's Journey, Global Metal, my favorite, Flight 666, Rush Beyond the Lighted Stage, and of course his epic TV miniseries Metal Evolution. Hey Sam, how you doing today?
I am doing very good, Cameron. Thanks for having me on.
All right, well, just so you know, I watched Metal: A Headbanger's Journey with my 10-year-old daughter last night, who now seems to have a better appreciation of where her dad's kind of coming from. And I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, but she really wants to see Iron Maiden the next time that they come here with her dad. So I guess that makes me feel good about the future of our youth and the music that they're listening to. But let me ask you this first. According to Sam Dunn, how is the metal tribe doing in 2013?
Well, I think metal seems to be at a pretty healthy place right now. You know, I think obviously the music industry as a whole has gone through some pretty major transformations in the last 10, 15 years. But I think what has kept metal pretty vibrant and intact is the fact that, one, you know, relative to other music styles, it's underground, so it has its own network of indie labels and radio and print media and online media as well. And I think also the fact that metal always was primarily meant to be experienced live is also keeping it healthy. You know, the live show is the only place now, I think, where you can really feel like you connect with the music. You know, back when I was a teenager, you get a vinyl and you sort of like immerse yourself in this visual world of metal music. You can't really have that anymore with, you know, getting music off iTunes or wherever. Yeah. So I think because you can go, you know, people always loved going to metal shows because of the aggressiveness and the visceralness of the music. For that reason too, I think metal seems to be doing pretty okay.
Yeah, I mean, certainly out in Calgary, the local scene is happening, and but you know, you're definitely right. There's something missing. I think the last CD I bought off iTunes was the latest CD from Black Sabbath, and yes, they give you the picture cards you can print out, but it's just not the same as going to your local store and buying that CD, that record, and ripping it apart and opening up and reading all those lyrics anymore. A lot has definitely changed in the last 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the physicality of metal music has always been a huge part of the appeal, and that physicality started with opening the record and reading the lyrics and sort of immersing yourself in the album art. There was something more to it than just listening to a song. And then, you know, on top of that, you know, going to the show and experiencing the live music, whether you're in the mosh pit itself or just standing outside of it, or even if you happen to be lucky enough to be pulling up on stage, I think the physicality of metal is a big part of the appeal. And so I think, you know, metal may survive ultimately because it gives people that physical release.
Yeah, I mean, the release is the big thing. That's always been it for me. You know, you have a tough week at work or whatever it is you do in 9 to 5, and then it's Friday or Saturday night, and you go to that gig or you go to that big show, and the band comes on, and you know, the rush you get from the band and the energy that it expels certainly is a better way to get out some of that aggression than some other ways that we won't get into, I guess.
Yeah, well, there was always more fights at frat parties than metal parties. Let's just leave it at that.
Well, we're a big band of brothers, aren't we? Brothers and sisters.
Yeah, brothers and sisters in black.
No doubt. Now, speaking of, you know, the live experience, you're coming out here to Calgary. That's where I'm broadcasting from for the Noctis 666 Lucifer Rex Festival and Conference. What can you tell me about your appearance at the festival?
Well, I mean, I went to Noctis a few years ago and had a great time. I think that what Therese and the team in Calgary are doing is great. I can appreciate how much work and effort it takes to get something like this not only off the ground, but keep it going year after year. So this year I'm going to be just involved in some panel discussions, going to be doing, I believe, like a live interview in front of a crowd, and probably, you know, I've even been asked to sign some autographs. So what the hell? So yeah, it's really about just, I think, primarily sharing my experience and what we do at Banger Films, talking about metal, talking about the future of metal, and all of that good stuff.
And there's a lot of buzz happening here in Calgary for your appearance. Now, you say you came to Noctis a few years ago. Are you going to be hanging out, checking out the festival while you're in town this time around? Or are there any bands you're excited to see if you're chilling out here?
Oh, absolutely. absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to see Carcass. I haven't had a chance to see them since they've regrouped and been back out touring. I'm a big fan of those guys. Also a huge fan of Sacrifice. I know Robert Venatti, and they were my favorite Canadian thrash band back in the 80s and 90s, and still I love the new record they put out recently. So yeah, absolutely. And Possessed has been thrown in for good measure. So I'm always up for a little Seven Churches.
I know there's a ton of great music on the bill, all different kinds of metal too. That's kind of what really attracted myself and the radio station to get involved, and we're really pumped for it as well. Speaking of music today, what kind of bands are you listening to right now? Is there someone up and coming that you want to share with us that maybe you can break someone out for us?
Well, I don't know if they're up and comers. I mean, they've been doing it for a while, but I really like this band out of Vancouver called Ancients. Their stuff I've been really digging recently. I think they've got like a cool combination of, I'm hearing a little bit of Opeth in there, and maybe a bit of Enslaved, and some other great influences. So I think not only are they a great band, but they're Canadian as well, and that's always nice to see.
Yep.
And then apart from that, I've been digging the new Sabbath record, and I just continue on my steady diet of everything from Gojira to Meshuggah to Vader. So I tend to gravitate more towards the extreme end of the spectrum these days. So that's what's keeping me busy.
Well, speaking of the extreme end of the spectrum, the Metal Evolution series was an in-depth look at the many different subgenres of metal, and I know you're currently working on the latest or the lost episode of Metal Evolution, focusing on extreme metal, right? So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, when we initially pitched the Metal Evolution series to VH1 in the US and the other broadcasters, we really wanted to do an episode on extreme metal, because I think if you're talking about the evolution of metal, you've got to include extreme metal, because extreme metal is the style that is really pushing metal to the edge, almost sort of testing the waters, as it were. So, unfortunately, they weren't really interested in doing it. I think they felt it was a bit too extreme for their demographic and for their network, which was disappointing, but we were happy to do the series anyways. And then once the series was released, we got a lot of feedback saying we love the series, but where's extreme metal? And that sort of, that just reinforced our feelings even stronger that it needed to be done. And so we decided to go about making it happen through an Indiegogo campaign. We did one campaign. We raised nearly $40,000, which was amazing. It helped pay for the whole filming and research and writing process that we needed to do to get it off the ground. And now we started a second campaign to basically get it done. We need to edit the material. We need to pay for the cost of licensing the archival footage and music from all of the bands. And I think it's an expensive business, making film and TV. I think, maybe a lot of people don't understand the costs that are involved in doing it. I'm not making any money off doing this episode. I'm doing it because it's missing. Yeah. And the cost, the money we're raising is strictly to put the episode on the screen.
Well, geez, imagine that, mainstream media not quite getting what real life is all about, hey?
Well, yeah, I guess it's the same old story. Then again, part of the attraction of extreme metal to me, especially when I was a teenager, was the fact that it wasn't mainstream.
Exactly.
It wasn't embraced by, sort of conventional TV or conventional media, and part of the appeal of it, I think, for me, was that it sort of took this effort to find it and to dig it up, and so in doing that, it feels like it's your own culture, your own subculture, and your own music, and so I understand why the networks didn't want to do it. It doesn't actually surprise me, but I think it just gave us the motivation to find another way to make it happen.
So what are some of the artists we can expect to see you feature in this lost episode of the Metal Evolution series?
Yeah, well, we traveled to Florida, New York, the UK, Switzerland, France, and Norway for this episode, and it'll include interviews with, everyone from Tom Araya and Martin Hain of Celtic Frost. We're hopefully going to be interviewing Mantis from Venom in a few weeks' time. It's, Shane Embury from Napalm Death, Bill Steer and Jeff Walker from Carcass, John Tardy from Obituary, David Vincent from Morbid Angel, Fenriz, Butcher, Silenos from Dimmu Borgir, and then some newer bands. Gojira and Enslaved are also going to feature towards the end of the episode as bands that are kind of taking extreme metal and doing kind of their own little twist on it. So it's going to be a jam-packed hour-long episode, I can promise that.
How are you going to fit all those bands in 1 hour, man? It almost sounds impossible.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult, and the trouble is it's going to be difficult to even fit those bands in, and I know that there's going to be a lot of bands that I would have liked to include and people would have liked to have seen, but we just aren't going to be able to make it happen. I mean, it's important that we cover our bases, but at the same time, it's important to us that we create stories that are engaging, and it's not, to me, always about just representing who's important. That is a part of it, but it's also about telling the story of extreme metal. Where did it begin? Where did it go? And where is it today? And when you do that, sadly, you can't always include all of your favorite bands. Yeah,
it's pretty tough. And I'm sure you're making quite a lot of our fans just drool for what this episode is going to contain with all those bands you mentioned. But I know if you're funding the project through Indiegogo, the average person, the average fan can actually be involved in this, right? How does all that work?
Well, that's a good question. I think that, the way we've been trying to explain the Indiegogo campaign to people is that, you're basically contributing and therefore you're paying to not only make it happen, but to see the episode. So in other words, instead of going down to your record store and buying a DVD, if you pitch in $6, for that $6, you are contributing to the campaign and paying to see the episode. So that's sort of the way we look at it. And then up from there, for people who want to contribute a bit more and want something more in return, this time around we're putting together sort of director's cut extended interviews with several of the bands. So you'll receive sort of a digital file that'll have all this extra material that didn't appear in the episode itself. So
cool.
You can go to the website and you'll be able to see all of the perks, as they're called, on the site.
Well, let's get that website out there for our fans, and I'll certainly post it on the Metal Nation radio page and in the chat room here. Can you tell us where people can go to help you fund this movie and be involved?
Absolutely. It's Indiegogo.com/lost episode.
Excellent. Nice and straightforward. And we'll definitely put that up for everyone to check out, and maybe some of our fans can certainly help you out. Now, I know from talking to your assistant, you're a really busy guy right now. You're working on all kinds of stuff. One thing that really piqued my interest when I was looking over what you're working on right now, and I got to admit, a lot of the people in the studio right now, same thing. Vincent Goes to Hell, an Alice Cooper doc opera, correct?
Yeah, that's right. We're working on the first feature documentary on the life and career of Alice Cooper. The film is now called Super Duper Alice Cooper.
Okay.
Just because it had just such a great ring to it, we couldn't resist.
Yeah.
So new title, but same film. It tells the tale basically of Alice's life as a kid growing up in Phoenix and then moving to LA and starting the band, and then sort of his ups and downs all the way to the mid '80s when he made his big comeback. And it's got interviews, of course, with Alice himself, with members of the original band, Dennis Dunaway and Neil Smith, and also some pretty big name celebrities, which people will be surprised were, really influenced by Alice Cooper. Everyone from Elton John to Iggy Pop to Dee Snider and Johnny Rotten of Sex Pistols. So we're super excited. We can't wait to get it out there.
So what stage is that project in? When can we expect to see that out, Sam?
Well, currently I'm standing just outside the sound mix studio where we're mixing the film, and our hope is to premiere it at the Sundance Film Festival in January, which would be great for us. We've never shown any of our films there, and then it will go to TV and DVD probably early spring next year.
Excellent. And, another one that really caught my eye, and certainly watching the Metal Evolution and, getting into the whole black metal and the Norwegian stuff and all that, is your documentary Satan, a documentary. Tell us about that. I mean, obviously, the history of heavy metal and hard rock music and, the dark arts and that presence, everyone talks about it all the time, whether it's real or not. What is this film going to encompass?
Well, this documentary is really the first film that takes a look at the influence of the devil in entertainment. It looks at film, music, media, and literature to some extent too, and it basically tackles the question: why does the devil not go away in entertainment? So it has interviews with everyone from Linda Blair, who starred in The Exorcist, to Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden, to Mike Mignola, who, for comic book nerds out there will know is the guy that created the Hellboy character.
Oh yeah, that's right.
To a pretty impressive roster of academics and writers. And we've even got a few exorcists in there too. So it's going to it's a fascinating film to us because it's the first film we've made that isn't simply about music. It's about something much bigger.
Oh, that sounds really cool. Very interesting. I'll be looking forward to that one. And all your banger film projects aside, I also read that you're still playing bass, but now you're kind of in a band called Machado and His Men. What's the scoop there? What kind of metal is this band? And can we expect maybe a CD to come out from you guys sometime soon?
Actually, that is a complete either Wikipedia or IMDb falsity.
Oh, no.
I have no idea who that band is. And how I ended up being connected to it, but it's just one of those things, sort of in the infinite mess of the digital world. Somehow that got on my profile. But yes, I play bass. I'm currently not in a band. I played in a thrash band called Burn to Black, which unfortunately broke up a few years ago. But yeah, no, I don't have anything to do with that band. So
okay,
you go.
Sorry about that. I should have had some more time to...
straight.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, thanks for doing that. We'll have to send an email to Wikipedia or something like that.
Yeah, I know. We've done that, but the wheels turn slowly there sometimes.
No doubt. And, with metal appears to certainly have a solid base, and the global metal community continues to grow. Do you think this growth is going to continue? What do you think the future of heavy metal is these days?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball. If I did, I'd probably be making a lot more money. But, I think that, put simply, I think there's no reason to question that metal will continue to be strong into the future. I think that what's been most fascinating over the last 10 years since, we made Headbanger's journey is, of course, we've seen a flood of documentaries about metal, not, of course, just from us, but, from some kind of monster to the Lemmy documentary to the Anvil movie, and on and on and on. And I think the reason why that's happening is because we know absolutely for sure now that metal is a multi-generational style of music, that this music is actually being passed on from parents to their kids.
Yep.
And I think that that's something, we back in, in the 70s or even in the 80s, people never would have predicted. But I think that's what we're seeing. And I don't really have any good reason to think that won't continue. I think you're always going to need music out there that taps into people's physicality, taps into their dark side, taps into the aggressive side, taps into the side that loves complex, virtuosic music.
Yeah.
Music that's difficult to play. All of these things are appealing not only to young people, but to people my age. I'm going to be 40 next year and on. So the future is bright for metal, but perhaps I should say the future is dark. That would be much more suitable.
That's a good way to put it. Lots of black T-shirts standing out in the deserts and in the concert halls, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, before we wrap up, again, reading over your biography, your body of work has mainly focused on metal and metal-related bands and issues. But I know that I see your new Evolution project is, something that also came from the underground and certainly morphed and changed into whatever you want to call it today. But I read that you're doing something called hip-hop evolution. Now, that's just a total 180 from heavy metal. To some people, I think I can kind of see the relation. But maybe you can tell some of the metalheads, before they start reading this, okay, what the hell is Sam doing dealing with hip-hop?
Well, yeah, for Scott and I, we felt that metal needed some attention. We're fans of the music, and that was doing Headbanger's journey and the other projects has been extremely important to us. But we're also interested in music and the cultures that surround music, and we're also storytellers, and that's a big part of the passion for us. And we just felt that, like metal, hip hop is a style of music that has transformed tremendously over its 40-year history, and that it is, people don't really know what it is anymore because it has changed and it's become so huge. It's become inseparable from the mainstream, even far beyond what metal has ever done. And so we just thought that this would be a great opportunity to do something on hip-hop. Originally, we were going to do a series. We've scaled it back to a 2-part documentary, which is going to feature Shad, the Canadian rapper out of London, Ontario. He is the host and guide of the film, and he's basically tackling the question, what is hip-hop? Because I don't think anyone really knows or agrees on that anymore. It started at parties in the Bronx and grew to become this absolute gigantic multi-million-dollar industry. So that's one of the next films we're tackling.
Well, we'll be looking forward to that. I don't know, maybe get some Anthrax "I'm the Man" mixed in there somehow, hey?
we may squeeze in some metal hip hop collaborations.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that hip hop has influenced metal. I mean, if you want to call them new metal bands or what have you, for me, it all just begins and ends with Rage Against the Machine, and everyone after them was just a copycat, right?
Yeah, well, I think, definitely there was a time there, late 80s, early 90s, when I think the energy of a lot of hip-hop and the energy of a lot of metal was the same.
Yeah.
When I talked to Scott Ian about growing up in the boroughs of New York City, he said, we didn't look at it as being metal or hip-hop. We looked at it as being aggressive music that spoke to us, and that wasn't our parents' music. And so for someone who grows up in that kind of environment, he didn't really have the same kind of boundaries. Obviously, they do sound very different, but for him, the energy is very similar. And I think that was a really kind of eye-opening thing for me to hear. And so, the parallels between metal and hip-hop have been quite strong during certain parts of their history.
Well, I mean, you just look at Def Jam Records. I mean, Slayer and all those hip-hop artists. Rick Rubin kind of knew back then, didn't he?
Absolutely, and Kerry King doing solos on Beastie Boys tracks. There's definitely a really interesting moment there where, a lot of long hairs were sharing the floor with a lot of hip hoppers.
Maybe we'll get back there one day.
Who knows? I'm sure we will. I mean, the ways that styles of music combine and intertwine now. I mean, we never would have imagined back in the late '80s. When hip-hop and metal were first joining forces. But I mean, the combinations are limitless now, it seems.
Well, and I think, too, the way the music industry is, I mean, the big music machine has kind of gone away, and I think music can really be dictated by the people now. I mean, your Indiegogo campaign, you got bands that put stuff up on YouTube and Facebook, and they can create a whole marketing machine for themselves out of that, and they don't really need the big record company anymore, especially if you can do this Indiegogo stuff to help fund and make your projects, your records, and your movies, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big conversation, the state of the music industry and what happened, but I think, the kind of, the music industry kind of ate its own tail in the sense that I think, a lot of the labels got too big, got too cumbersome, didn't really speak to the artist, the connection was lost, and I think that what we're seeing now is sort of the gradual backlash against that, where perhaps these record labels got a little out of control, and so what you have is musicians, and promoters and people who work in the media sort of wanting to do it for their own, and it's kind of a confusing and a bit of a troubling time in the music industry right now. But I think ultimately we'll look back at this period, and it will be seen as a regrouping, and something that was essential to kind of get music back in touch with what it was meant to do, which was basically for people to experience together. So that's the way I see it anyway.
I couldn't agree with you more, and your films are certainly helped doing that, exposing different things to different people that may not have looked at it before. I mean, I get back to my 10-year-old daughter last night, who, when I was researching it, and she's looking over my shoulder, she's like, well, what's this movie? Can I watch it with you? And that's what piqued her interest. Now, she's 10 years old and doesn't listen to the crappy music you'd think 10-year-old kids listen to, but it's just nice to know that, again, the youth today can see that and just grasp onto it and run with it,
Well, kids are smarter than we think they are, and also that means that they question the music.
Yeah.
And I think what we're seeing also, and that's a good point you've raised, is that I think we're seeing young people smelling out a fake, so to speak. I think a lot of the dance music, a lot of the music that is extremely popular right now just doesn't appeal to a lot of kids because it feels manufactured. It feels like it was created to sell records,
yes,
rather than connect with you as a listener. And so, I think that's why you see the success of things like Guitar Hero. I think has got a lot to do with the fact that there's always going to be a group of kids out there that want to know how the music is made and want to be involved in the music. And I think that's another reason why you're going to always see music like metal continue into the future.
Well, that's great, Sam. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know we've gone a little bit over what we said we do, but I just appreciate you spent this time with me today. But before we go, I know we got people listening that look up to you and aspire to do exactly what you do. I mean, hell, I'll admit, I want to do what you do, man. I mean, what you did with Iron Maiden, that's my band. I've seen those guys over 40 times. I've followed them around the country a couple times. But just the fact that you get to do that kind of stuff just blows me away. What kind of advice or can you give to anyone who aspires to create music-related documentaries and get involved the way that you are now in the music industry today?
Work with people that are smarter than you, and work with people that have experience that can help. Certainly, speaking personally, I came into the film world with no film background, and my business partner Scott had experience in this area, and we never would have been able to do it without his knowledge and his background. And then, once we started working together, we hired people that were good at what they do. Learn to work as a team member, and that's the biggest piece of advice I can possibly give. It's not something that's specific to film. You can apply that to a lot of different areas, but I think people even, look at what we do and they think it's all me, it's me with a camera, it's me doing all of this stuff, whereas in fact, a lot of it isn't me. I'm part of a team, but because I'm the one that's on camera, people just sort of assume that I do it all myself, and nothing could be further from the truth. So my only recommendation is that, find people to work with, build relationships, get to know people who know what they're doing, and be open to absorbing their knowledge and their criticism too, and then that'll get you somewhere.
Well, Sam, that's sound advice not only for getting into what you do, but really just sound advice for anyone that wants to get involved in a project or take something like a business to the next level anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, Sam, I really appreciate your time today. I know you've got a very busy schedule. You got all kinds of stuff on the go. Hopefully we can hook up and get maybe a photo or a handshake while you're in town for Noctis. And looks like we'll probably bump into you at the Carcass Show on that Saturday night.
Absolutely. I will be there.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to bumping into you, Sam. Thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it. We're going to go on now to some music. And since you love Iron Maiden so much, what's your favorite Iron Maiden song? What song should we play for you right now?
Oh, let's do Aces High. Why not?
This is Iron Maiden on Metal Nation Radio and Metalheads United.